and welcome to On the Kerbs. I'm your host, T. Malvis Daily. Joining me this week is Formula 3 driver Federico Malvestiti. The Italian and I caught up recently to chat about his entire racing career to date, how results on the page don't always accurately represent the reality in motorsport, which other categories he'd love to go racing in the future, and much more. So, without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi Federico, thanks for being here today. First of all, how are you?
Hi everyone. Thanks to you for inviting me, and I'm good, thanks.
Perfect. We're happy to have you here. So, first question I'd like to ask everyone I talk to on here: what first got you interested in motorsport?
Well, I got into motorsport when I was 5 years old. First time I went was on a go-kart. And the first time I went on a go-kart, and I fell in love for actually this sport. And since there I started driving and I move on. Actually, I started driving inside the Parabolica of Monza. They were building like a track, and in the weekend I was going there with my father and driving. And then I moved to the Italian Championship and then International Championship. And then in around 2015, I moved in Formula 4 with Antonelli, and then I did 3 years in Formula 4, 2016, 17, and 18, but 17 and 18 with Genser. And then, I had the opportunity to go in Formula Renault 2019, and then 2020 FIA Formula 3, and then also 2022 FIA Formula 3. But everything started from an afternoon when I went trying a go-kart.
I'd say Monza is not a bad place at all to really start things off. I can see why you fell in love with it.
Exactly. I was born in Monza, and I'm actually living 500 meters from the circuit. So whenever I hear like a car driving around the circuit, I just go there with a bicycle and I just stay there and watching.
Someone's got to have that hard life of living right next door to the Temple of Speed, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
So you kind of gave me a brief rundown of your resume there accordingly, and it's what I want to talk about next. So you competed in Italian F4 for a few seasons with a highest championship position of 6th overall, as well as a win at Imola back in 2018. What was the most important thing you learned for your racecraft during this time?
For sure, the best season in Formula 4 was the last one with Genser. Also, I have to say, I competed for 3 years, but the first one I was with Antonelli, and it was a very difficult season. I was a bit young and not very mature, so I would say that my real journey started in 2017 with Genser. And 2017 was like a learning year, I would say, and then 2018 just trying to put everything together. For sure was not an easy year because we had some up and downs. What I learned for sure is to be fast on a single lap, but also to be very consistent round by round. Because in the end, I did P6 in the championship, but for example, we lost, I think, a few places in the last round in Mugello under a heavy rain. So until there, we were P4 or something like this. So for sure, what I learned is to be consistent from the start, from the beginning to the end.
It's always tricky for people on the outside to only see the results from the race to know quite how easy or difficult it was to get those results. So
also, we were fighting against two very strong teams, which is one, of course, Prema, and the other one was Bytec. And at that time, Bytec was like a Prema team. So basically, and they had 3 drivers per team. So I had to fight against 6 very competitive drivers. So it was not easy, but also was really cool.
Did it make that win in Imola more satisfying then?
Yeah, for sure. It was the best race. And actually, I did 2 pole positions that weekend, one for race 1 and one for race 3. But race 1, we didn't manage to win. We did P2. And then instead, race 3, I could remember defending the whole race from Fittipaldi. He was trying to attack me every lap, but then I managed to keep the position, and then finally we won that race.
There's always a Fittipaldi somewhere.
Yeah.
You then moved into Formula Renault Eurocup for 2019, and you got some solid results again over another tricky season. But what was the whole What was the whole year like from your perspective?
Yeah, in 2019 we moved to Formula Renault with Bitec. It was a new championship because the car was at the first year of life that year, and also the team was new in the championship. But as we saw, it was very competitive in Formula 4. We expected the same that year. Instead, we're struggling a little bit all together as a team to find the right setup for the car. And the first round was really difficult, I would say. Then I decided to make a change in the team. I brought my engineer from Formula 4 with Genser, and immediately we did P3 in Spa. So it was a good change, I would say. And from that race and going on, we were always more or less in the points, or quite always in the top 10. So I would say it was a second half of the season better than the first one.
Do you think that change because you brought in this person you were familiar with? Was it just because you knew each other well there, and that was a big part of it, or what do you think was the main reason?
Also, the first engineer, of course, the first engineer was a good engineer, but we weren't going very well together, so there was not that feeling. So I preferred to going on working with an engineer that I had already for 2 years. So we knew each other's, and we knew what I wanted from the car. I know what he wanted from my driving style. So together we did a good job, and we started to be always in the top 7, 8, something like this.
So again, that consistency that everyone kind of assumes is on track is also very important off track as well with the people you have around there. And you can see the difference immediately then with the season.
Yeah, it's really important to be to feel good with the teams, with mechanics and engineers especially. It's really important the work you do out of track, because in the end you don't have a lot of time when you are driving, so you have to be well prepared. And yeah, like this, when you're driving, you know exactly what you have to do. So, and also if you feel the car, if you feel comfortable with the car, for sure you have a different mentality when you're driving.
You can focus more on not the more important things, but there's less you have to worry about, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. You know that the car you're driving is yours. You feel like it's your car, so you know what you want.
And then you've just finished your second full year in Formula 3 with Genza, so you've gone back to them as well. How would you sum up your season?
It was a quite difficult season. Never had the chance to get in the top 10 or around the top 15. We had some bad luck through some qualifyings, and some bad decision that made our weekends more difficult. With the format of this season, the qualifying was the most important, I would say, session of the weekend, because the reverse grid was only for the top 12, and if you qualified out of the top 12, for sure your weekend was more difficult. I think I arrived quite prepared as a driver, because I had a lot of experience from the previous categories and the previous year. I felt good with my engineer, but just I couldn't get the right feeling from the car.
Was that just in qualifying that you had that feeling, or was that throughout the weekend?
Yeah, more in qualifying, because normally with the race setup, we were more on spot, I would say. We were closer to the others. But on qualifying, with the new setup tires, we were struggling a little bit more. So for sure, everything was very tight. And if you lose 2-3 tenths, it's easy to lose positions. And so I think that was our weak points.
And like you were saying, then difficult season. And when you have these kind of results where they're not ideal, it kind of, how does that impact you, and how in your way of you're approaching it? Like, say if this happens at the beginning of the Formula 3 season, you're obviously optimistic it will change and get better, but then when you get to the end of the season and it's still difficult, how does that kind of impact you and motivate you maybe to keep going? What changes in your mind when that happens?
Well, for sure, I learned a lot also as a man, and not only as a driver, because at one point I had to fight, let's say, with the team, or I had some idea of what I wanted from the car, and I just tried to convince the team and all the engineers to have some changes on the car. This one was not always easy, but I know what I want from the car, and I know my driving style. So my way of working was going a little bit against the way of the team management and everyone. So for sure, under that point of view, I learned quite a lot. And in the end, we started with, I would say, in a difficult way. The start of the season was not easy, but then I just try to focus round after round and say, okay, this is a new round. Let's archive the past one and just focus on the new one. And in the end, we arrive at the end of the season. So when you look back, for sure was not what I expected from. Also because in 2021, I was driving in Porsche. So I moved for 1 year to GT cars, but I've always been in love for Formula cars. So once they gave me the opportunity to be back in Formula 3, I was super excited, and I was really focused. I put a lot of effort into getting back in shape, also with study, because I also studied at university, so it was not easy to deal with both things. But yeah, I mean, just not a good season.
When you have a tricky season like that, do you look back and still have like 1 or 2 moments that were your favorite though among that? So despite all the difficulties, there were still parts you enjoy, or do you just think it's a bit too much character building, we'll try again next year?
Well, after the end of the season, when it's been a difficult one, I just take a little bit of break, and then I just try to think what the future brings to me. For example, now I'm focused more on karting, because I was also driving for karting this year, and I still have the international grand finals, so I'm training quite a lot with karting, and then focusing a lot on my exam, because basically drivers normally don't study or don't.
You just have to make it a bit trickier for yourself.
Yeah, but also I'm a university student, so I can't take too much.
What are you studying?
Mechanical engineering.
Okay, maybe it'll come in handy then. Never know though, with the car setup for future.
Yeah, exactly.
Long-term strategy there.
Yeah, maybe one day. So yeah, basically, actually, I don't know what the future will brings to me, but in this month, I will focus on my studies, try to find some sponsors, and try to keep the one I have. Because of course, after a difficult season, it's also not easy to keep the sponsors, because also for sure also they want some results from you. So I will try to convince them to stay with me for 1 more year, and then I will try to see what I can figure out for the next season.
So it's impressive to see you juggling all these different things all at once and still looking rather calm and collected about it all.
Yeah. But I don't know for sure. I don't think I will stay again in Formula Championship, because it's too expensive, and also Formula 3, I think I will be too old.
Sounds ridiculous when you think about it. I mean, you're still fairly young in the grand scheme of things, but it's the way it is.
Yeah, no, but normally at 22 you should be already in Formula 2 or category. So, but also it's very demanding from the economic side. So I will try to maybe look something in GTs or.
I was going to say, you mentioned earlier that you were driving in the Porsche Carrera Cup in Italy. What was it like to change disciplines? And you've kind of alluding to it, would you be interested in going back to that kind of thing if you didn't go into Formula 3 again next year?
It was different experience, moved from Formula 2 Porsche, especially from Formula 2 Porsche Cup, which is a little bit different from a GT3, because the Porsche Cup has much less aerodynamics, no traction control, only ABS. And also the car is moving quite a lot because the engine is in the back and is out of the line of the wheels. So when you're braking, the car is moving quite a lot. So it was not very easy to adapt myself to like that kind of car. And also I was used to brake, for example, if you take corner 1 in Monza, you brake around 100 meters with a Formula, but with a Porsche, you have to brake much earlier and going into the corner very, very slow. So it was a bit difficult to adapt.
Were there a couple of times where you kind of went a lot further than you should have because of instinct? Or?
Yeah. Like I remember the first time I went in a high-speed corner, I entered like flat out. And when we look at the data, I was much faster than the driver who was driving in that championship. but for me it was very slow. And then how could
That's
you
quite
do
a weird
that?
feeling, no?
Yeah, because the main difference between Formula and GT is the amount of speed you can bring into a corner and how late you can brake. Actually, with the GT, instead you have to focus more on going out of the corner very quickly. You brake early, you enter very slow, but then you have to go very early on throttle. So I had to readapt completely all my driving style. And of course, when I moved from Porsche to Formula was again very difficult. The first test in Jarrett's, it was like being on a roller coaster because everything was so fast.
We've seen quite a lot of drivers over the past few years go from single-seater, either Formula 2 or Formula 3, to the World Endurance Championship or the European Le Mans Series. Would that be something that interests you then?
Yeah, for sure. I would like to be one day in those championship, LMP2 or GT World Challenge. Anyway, I think GT3 cars is really cool to drive. Actually, I did one test in February with the Honda GT3,
Nice.
and I could feel the difference between a Porsche Cup and a GT3. So I would say Porsche is here, and then there is a GT3, and then a Formula car. So
you're getting all the pieces now slowly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
it's good as well as from a driving perspective, because you want to, if you're going to develop and become as perfect a driver as there is such a thing, you need to have all these different experiences in all these different categories really to understand that. So it's interesting to hear you talk about the transition from single seater to Porsche and then back again, and seeing what the troubles with that are.
It's not very common to go from a GT cars and then back to Formula. This is not very common. It's more common to go from Formula to GTs.
So aside from that, then possibly Elms or working your future, have you got any other ambitions for 2023 and beyond in terms of motorsport?
For sure, I would like to find a seat somewhere, maybe in a competitive championship with a competitive team and with strong teammates. And for sure, I would like to stay wherever I will be racing. I would like to stay on top and show which is my real value and bring home some good results. And why not maybe one day be a professional driver in GT cars or somewhere else like LMP2 or because
so
I have to
if we see you in LMP2, then we heard it here first.
Yeah, okay, for sure. LMP2 is similar to Formula car because they have a lot of aerodynamics and downforce and everything. So, but also I have to see with my sponsor and everything what I can afford.
For sure. So which racing track is your favorite, even if you've never raced there?
I would say, okay, Monza for sure is very special for me. But apart from that, I would say Spa-Francorchamps. Every time I drive there, I think the track is really cool to drive, a lot of ups and downs, and then it's a long track through the wood, and yeah, it's really nice. High speed corner. Normally my favorite tracks are with high speed corners, and every time I drive there with any cars, it's really cool.
How did you find it with the changes this year?
Actually didn't change quite a lot for us. I mean, Eau Rouge, they ran out race just a little bit wider, but Eau Rouge is
as much as anything.
Yeah, and then the escape road in some corners, they remove a bit of asphalt in the exit after the curb and then put the gravel. I think it's better because it helps us quite a lot with the track limits. It's not always easy for Marshall to check all the track limits, and sometimes there were some drivers that were not checked for track limits and the others yes. So with the gravel, it's the same for everyone.
So I remember some of the racing we saw in Austria this year.
Yeah, also for drivers. Yeah, and also for drivers, it's a little bit more difficult, let's say, to push to the limit because if after the curves you have a lot of asphalt, you just try and see. But then if you have the gravel, then you are in the gravel and
you need to be more precise.
So yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more difficult to find the limit or more risky, let's say it is.
A couple of fun questions to finish off then. Do you have a favorite song?
Favorite song? Not really. I have a favorite rapper, I would say.
Okay, I'll take that. Who we got?
It's an Italian rapper.
Okay, I probably won't know, but we could say it anyway and not stick a link.
Yeah. Okay, I have to say I listen to very different type of music. It depends a lot in the mood I am. but rap is one of my favorite type of music, and Gue Pequeño is the name of my favorite rapper.
I'd say nope. I'll try to check that out. And the final question, also weirdly musical. I don't know. Maybe I was in a fun mood when I was making these questions. If you could learn any musical instrument and become an expert at it immediately, which one would you choose? Why?
I'm in love with piano.
Okay. I say
really-
very different. You've got rap on the one hand, then we go straight to piano. I see what
I
you mean
thought
there.
that I listen to many different type of music, from pop to rap to classic music. But I like sometimes to just relax when I'm in my room with piano music. And during the quarantine, I start learning piano by myself and enjoyed it quite a lot. Of course, then when the quarantine finished, I had no more free time to bring on this passion. But if I would have more free time, I'd definitely like to learn to play piano, but to quite a high level.
And so we see you and Charles Leclerc at some point having a piano off, maybe.
yeah, exactly. But I have this passion since a few years. Before some of the drivers, before some of the drivers show it on social media, and then of course this exploded like as a trend, I would say. But yes, it's since a few years that I like piano.
So maybe we get a piano sponsor for you, and they can help out with the motorsport career and balance these things out.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows? Maybe.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I want to thank you very much for your time and wish you the best of luck with the karting and everything else that you do for the rest of this year and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Federico for coming onto the Kerbs with me, and I want to wish him the best of luck again for the future. Join me again soon when I'll be chatting to another famous face from the world of motorsport. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the other interviews on the On the Kerbs YouTube channel. If you want to hear more from me, you can listen to me chat about F1, amongst other things, over on the Undercut podcast, and you can also hear me dissecting everything Nitro RX related, including chatting with special guests, over on the Nitro RX podcast. Both podcasts are available here on YouTube, as well as over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you like to listen. You can also follow me over on Instagram at t.albers.daily.onthekerbs and read my various motorsport articles over on Is It Fast and Paddock Sorority. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next week for the next episode.